हांडे द्वारा समर्थ की इस पहल को आइए आगे बढ़ाते हैं। एक बार फिर से हम इस खास मंच पर मौजूद हैं, मंथन कर रहे हैं, चर्चा कर रहे हैं। मेरे साथ एक खास कुलीग मेरे को एंकर हैं, धन्या मेरे साथ मौजूद हैं। लोकोमोटिव डिसऑर्डर डिसेबिलिटी की ब्रांड एम्बेसडर साल की हमारे साथ धन्या हैं मौजूद। साथ ही मैं आपको बता दूं हमारे साथ आराधना लाल है, लेवेंट्री की, निपुण मल्होत्रा हमारे साथ मौजूद हैं, सेंट स्टीफन से पढ़े हुए हैं, वर्ल्ड इकोनॉमिक फोरम ने इन्हें सम्मानित किया है। यहाँ पर मैं बता सकती हूँ विधि लीगल फाउंडेशन की दामिनी घोष हमारे साथ हैं, और नित्या रमेश जो हमारी स्पेसेस हैं, अर्बन स्पेसेस हैं, उनको हम किस तरह से डिज़ाइन कर सकते हैं, करते हैं भी, ये उसके बारे में हम बात करेंगे। पॉलिसीज़ के बारे में बात करेंगे, भवन निर्माण की हम बात करेंगे, किस तरह से जो पहुंचने के रास्ते सुगम हो सकते हैं उस पर बात करेंगे। सबसे पहले मैं धन्या रवि से बात करूंगी। धन्या, टेल अस अ बिट अबाउट योर जर्नी। इट हैजंट बीन इजी। यू हैव बीन अवॉर्डेड बाय नेशनल अवार्ड्स. यू हैव कम फ्रॉम बैंगलोर एंड यू आर वर्किंग विद Enable India. Tell us a little bit more and how the journey has been till now.
Journey as of now has been very liberating, I would say. Just like you said, it wasn't easy. I come from a very traditional rural background. I hail from Kerala and I've been brought up in Bangalore. But no, as I born with this rare disease called osteogenesis imperfecta, but the condition of this character of this condition is that until teenage my bones used to fracture without an invitation. And until teenage I've gone through more than 200 fractures, and coping with that my childhood has always been more with the hospital, and I could not get into a mainstream schooling due to the lack of awareness in the at my home as well as in the special schools as well as in the mainstream school. So I done my academics at homeschooling. So growing up as a child, I think in our life one of the most beautiful phase is always childhood, and my childhood has always been inside the four walls or inside, that's my room, or hospital beds. So that was my initial till my teenage. And
if I may add, your teachers have done a wonderful job.
Absolutely.
Please tell us a bit more. How was it finding a teacher or the society around? How was it?
Thank you, Nidhi, for bringing this question, because whatever I am today, it is because of volunteers, I would say, and that is something we really need to have more in our country. So like I said, my parents was not so much aware of the importance of education for a woman with disability, not putting any gender bias, but keeping disability as an object. They were not sure is it really important to educate me, and they said, let's teach what, my brother, I have an elder brother, so he can teach me. That's what the plan was. And then my neighbor auntie came down and said to my father that I'm going to teach Danya every day 1 hour, and then started my journey with proper mainstream books where I got it done from my friends every year as on. So 10 years she voluntarily taught me. So looking back, I would say now I don't regret of not going to the mainstream school, because she was one among 10 teachers, I would say. There's a lot that I learned more than academics.
So Tanya, let's take this program forward now.
Absolutely. I think I like to ask Nipun this question, because today morning I came with my friend, he's a volunteer and a very good friend of mine. So when I came with the airport and all the scanning and all of that, I was just thinking, when will actually get rid of this as a wheelchair user? How can we break these kind of barriers? And Nipun, I think you are one who always came up with the solutions, or spoke for the community. And there's a lot that you have brought down, like Amazon app and X-ray scanning at the airport, security, GST, and many of that. So can you just provide some more, like how we together as a collective work on this, and how did you get started with that?
Sure, I think that's a very important question, and I cannot take full credit for all those moments. I think it's a collective effort of the disability movement. But when you speak about scanning at airports, etc., I think it is a pity that a lot of airports today use X-ray machines to get people out of wheelchairs, or even make people with disabilities remove their prosthetics, etc., during security checks. Interestingly, the Bureau of Civil Aviation Security has actually come up with a policy that that doesn't need to be done. And me, along with a group of disability activists, had met the CISF and the BCS, and these rules were changed. Implementation, of course, becomes a challenge, because of which there are a lot of states and a lot of airports where that is still not done. And but the rule is there, and I think that is really the story of India in the last 10 years when it comes to disability. I think a lot has moved forward in terms of creating policies, laws, etc. We have the Rights of Persons with Disabilities Act 2016 that came up, which said that in 5 years all public buildings will be accessible. You spoke about this airport security, etc. as well. So I think we've seen the intent over the last 5 to 10 years, but I think now it's the time for execution. And I hope this Samarth by Hyundai campaign pushes the government, the private sector and all other stakeholders to start executing what's really written on paper in terms of laws and policies.
अपने एग्जीक्यूशन की बात की, आराधना लाल हमारे साथ लेमन ट्री से मौजूद हैं. मैम, ज़रा अपने होटल चेन्स के बारे में बताइए, किस तरह से जो आपकी हायरिंग पॉलिसीज़ हैं, हाउ डज इट वर्क, व्हाट इज़ द थॉट बिहाइंड इट?
Thanks so much. So at Lemon Tree Hotels, we've been hiring people with disability for the last 16 years, and it's part of our HR strategy. हम लोग की कंपनी का ये पॉलिसी है actually. और disability में there are many different kinds of disability present in our hotels. It includes the deaf, people with a physical handicap, people with low vision, and in the last 11 years we've done work with intellectual and developmental disability as well as autism, basically the neurodiverse disabilities. And what we are finding is that the more we venture into this, the more benefits come our way. So that I'll explain this. When our customers observe that there are team members who have a disability and they can see वो कितनी अच्छी तरह trained हैं और जो भी उनको task करना है वो कर पा रहे हैं, चाहे वो coffee shop में हो, चाहे front desk में हो, चाहे housekeeping में हो, and they observe that the service is being given to them the way they want to receive it, and it is of good quality like any other person, that acceptance goes to a new level altogether. Our company is inclusive, yes, but because we have so many customers who stay with us across our 96 hotels in more than 58 destinations, we are in a way passing this message on forward, and people are able to observe the reality of it, because बोलना बड़ा आसान है, मगर अगर हम ट्रेनिंग ठीक से नहीं देंगे और वो सर्विस ठीक से नहीं देंगे, why will the guest come and stay with us? Why will the guest pay money if he doesn't receive service from a well-trained person? That's what his expectation is. So we've been able to build a model around it, a lot of focus on learning and development, on training, and a lot of focus on sensitization. This thought process has come from our chairman and managing director, and the leadership team has totally understood it and has bought into it. But if we have an employee base, total base of say 8,000, 9,000 people, how are they going to understand? We have to first sensitize them. So on a regular basis across our hotels, we talk about why disability, what are the benefits. Then we talk specifically about if there are deaf team members in your team, how shall you work with them? We teach everybody Indian Sign Language. Now this is an interesting thought. I believe in school actually, we should be teaching, of course, English, we should be teaching Hindi, and we should be teaching Indian Sign Language. I'm really proud to say all 7,000 plus employees of Lemon Tree Hotels, we know Hindi, we know English, and we know Indian Sign Language. We do.
दामिनी घोष हमारे साथ मौजूद हैं, विधि लीगल से जुड़ी हुई हैं, रिसर्च बहुत की है इस वर्क के लिए आप लोगों ने. तमाम नीतियाँ बनती हैं, ऐलान होते हैं, कानून के बारे में भी अगर कुछ है भी तो भी लोगों को पता नहीं है, जो ये दिव्यांग वर्ग है. ज़रा बताइए क्या सिचुएशन आपने ज़मीन पर पाई?
Sure, thank you. So a little bit about the Center for Legal Policy. We were set up in 2013 as a legal research think tank to make better laws and improve governance. And while we work on diverse practice areas, disability is something which we have started looking at more recently. And one of the aspects which we have covered is accessibility, particularly access to urban spaces. And really the work is about original independent legal research to understand the barriers in our urban spaces, which when they interact with the impairments of a person with disability and how they hamper that person from leading an independent life of their choice. So I think one of the main findings which came out through the course of last few years where we've done this work is specifically in the context of access to cities has been that the law is there. The Rights of Persons with Disabilities Act is a robust legal framework. It reflects our commitments under the UNCRPD. But one of the issues that came out was that lot of the enforcement machinery within the law itself, which is your SCPDs, your district level committees, the special courts, when framework like that has already been provided under the legislation, why is it that those have still not been put in place, right? The requirement of having accessibility standards for services and facilities which a city can offer, right? This is across sectors. Why have all those accessibility standards and requirements not been enacted till more recently, right? We now see a spate of initiatives being rolled out by the government. So I would say that while the framework is there, a lot of the details within the framework need to be acted upon. As Nipun said that the law was there, the framework is laid out, now we really need to take action.
Just a quick short question, 119 laws which were discriminatory,
Yes.
आप लोगों की
Yes.
संस्था द्वारा उनको हटाया गया, थोड़ा सा बताइए इसके बारे में.
This was in relation to laws which had ableist provisions which discriminated against persons with leprosy. So it started as an exercise of us doing a full-blown legal analysis, finding it out, and then we had all this research. And but the question is, what is the impact of that research? Where is it going from there? And one option is, of course, we can approach different government departments across states and do it on a piece-by-piece basis, which is a very, very time-consuming process. We also felt at that time, this was some time back, that filing a more strategic litigation before the Supreme Court to take note of this exercise actually had a huge impact. It set a precedent which sort of triggered a movement within various state governments to start repealing these kind of discriminatory provisions.
Absolutely.
Just wanted to ask you itself, like, what is this next level of policies or frameworks that you're working on?
Okay, so right now a lot of the work, as I was mentioning, has been generally on access to urban spaces, and what has to be remembered with disability is, when I talk as a lawyer, is that it cuts across practice areas. You know, there is a whole component of access to urban spaces, then there's health, education, early intervention, sports, you name it. So it cuts across. The second aspect which one needs to keep in mind is that the implementation or the framework itself is spread across the central, the state, as well as the local levels. So there is a lot going on in that sense. And what we feel is that while a lot of our work has been general, now we've sort of started narrowing down on specific areas of intervention. So a lot of our work has been about focusing on, say, parks, on making inclusive play spaces, or to sort of put together representations on making buses accessible. We would have seen there has been a lot of talk about buses over the last few months, whether in Karnataka or at a national level. How, when we are procuring buses, at the start itself, can we have a framework where accessibility measures are already incorporated rather than as an afterthought?
Nithya, you are from Jana Urban Space. What is the mindset of people? How have you seen any change? And when you design the roads, the entrances to the buildings, not only the government buildings, but parks, etc. And you work in so many states, it's not only in one Karnataka or Chennai where you're based. So what is the difference, or what do you have to say on that?
So I would really like to second what she said. We have great harmonized guidelines in the center, but unfortunately it's not mandated that you follow it. So if I were to build a building, I'm a developer, it's important for me to follow the fire norms to get the fire NOC. Right? And that is how I can then go ahead and sell my houses or whatever it is I'm building. But it is not important or imperative that I get a disability NOC. So I can go ahead and build what I want, and while it's there at the center, it gets diluted at the state, and by the time it comes to the ULBs, where your engineers building your footpath or building a park, this is not in their mind frame. It's not that the average engineer wants to make our city not inclusive. They just don't know. and then there is no enforcement, or the guidelines are not disseminated enough. There's not enough awareness. There's not enough capacity building. If you look at our cities or look at the work we do, when we say we want to build inclusive streets and public spaces for all, it's not just for the disabled. It's for all of us, right? We're so intertwined. If you have a walkable footpath with widely spaced bollards that a wheelchair can go through, so can a stroller, so can an elderly person with a walker. If you have a wheelchair-friendly sink, it also helps all the children. Many of us who are parents know the trouble of always having to carry our child to a sink. India has one of the longest coastlines. We're a peninsula, but except Chennai, I haven't yet seen a beach which has a boardwalk that allows wheelchair users to go near the sea.
Absolutely, you raised a very important point. निपुण मुझे आपसे ये सवाल पूछना था. आपने हम सिर्फ जैसे बीचेस की बात हुई, जीवन सिर्फ पोस्ट ऑफिस या ATMs या हॉस्पिटल्स तक ही लिमिटेड नहीं है. म्यूज़िक फेस्टिवल्स के लिए, लाइब्रेरीज़ के लिए आपने पूरी एक जद्दोजहद लड़ी है, और उसके बाद कुछ चीज़ें हो पाई हैं. आप ज़रा बताइए उसके बारे में, क्योंकि आपने ज़ोमैटो ऐप में एक फ़िल्टर लगवाया किस तरह से व्हीलचेयर एक्सेसिबिलिटी किसी रेस्टोरेंट में है कि नहीं, वो आप चेक कर सकते हैं. तो ये अपने आप में बहुत अहम है. थोड़ा उसके बारे में.
हाँ जी, एक्चुअली प्रॉब्लम इंडिया में क्या ये होती है कि जब लोग पर्सन विद डिसेबिलिटीज़ को देखते हैं तो उनको एज अ बेचारा एटीट्यूड के साथ देखते हैं, और देखते हैं कि बेसिकली उनको रोटी कपड़ा मकान चाहिए और उसके अलावा उनकी कोई ख्वाहिशें नहीं हैं. जब ज़ोमैटो ऐप की बात है, इसके पीछे एक थोड़ी छोटी कहानी है जो मैं 30 सेकंड में बताऊंगा. कि 2015 में मैं एक पब के एंटर कर रहा था अपने कुछ दोस्तों के साथ, और जब मैं पब एंटर कर रहा था, जो उस पब का जो मैनेजर था उसने बोला कि हम आपको एंट्री अलाउ नहीं करेंगे क्योंकि हमारा माहौल ख़राब हो जाएगा अगर हम पर्सन विद डिसेबिलिटी को अंदर अलाउ करेंगे. और मैंने ट्विटर पे जाके उसको ट्वीट किया और वो इशू पूरा ट्रेंड होने लग गया, और मेरे को बहुत लोगों ने फ़ोन किया उसके बाद बोल के कि हमारे साथ भी ऐसी डिस्क्रिमिनेशन हुई है, ऐसे चैलेंजेस हुए हैं एट्सेट्रा. तो मेरे को लगा कि कोई इंस्टीट्यूशनल चेंज की ज़रूरत है. तब मैं ज़ोमैटो के पास गया और मैंने ज़ोमैटो को रिक्वेस्ट किया और ज़ोमैटो के साथ काम किया टू ऐड दीज व्हीलचेयर एक्सेस फिल्टर्स. इससे दो काम होते हैं. एक तो यू कैन आइडेंटिफाई कि कौन सा रेस्टोरेंट एक्सेसिबल है और कौन सा नहीं है, पर दूसरा जब ज़ोमैटो जैसा एक एग्रीगेटर रेस्टोरेंट्स के सवाल पूछने लग जाता है तो रेस्टोरेंट्स के अंदर भी एक एटीट्यूड चेंज हो जाता है फॉर पर्सन्स विद डिसेबिलिटीज़. उसके बाद मुझे लगा कि पर्सन विद डिसेबिलिटीज़ को बाहर भी जाना है, सेलिब्रेट भी करना है. सो आई स्टार्टेड वर्किंग विद अ लॉट ऑफ फेस्टिवल्स टू मेक देम एक्सेसिबल. फॉर एग्जाम्पल NH7 वीकेंडर एक म्यूज़िक फेस्टिवल होता था जिनके साथ हमने काम किया टू फुली मेक इट एक्सेसिबल. म्यूज़िक कॉन्सर्ट्स होते हैं जिसमें लोग ज़्यादा खड़े होते हैं, व्हीलचेयर यूज़र को तो कुछ दिखता ही नहीं है बिकॉज वो बैठे होते हैं, लोअर हाइट पे होते हैं. तो फॉर देम फॉर एग्जाम्पल वाई नॉट हैव अ हायर्ड सीटिंग प्लेस. जयपुर लिटरेरी फेस्टिवल में मैंने व्हीलचेयर्स देनी शुरू कर दी बिकॉज रियलाइज कि काफ़ी एल्डरली पॉपुलेशन वहाँ पे आती है और उनको चलने में दिक्कत आती है. एंड इनफैक्ट मैं तो ये बोलता हूँ कि पीपल कैन नॉट बी डिवाइडेड इनटू पीपल विद डिसेबिलिटीज़ एंड पीपल विदाउट डिसेबिलिटीज़. एवरीबडी इज टेम्पररी एबल बॉडीड, क्योंकि जब भी कोई बुजुर्ग होएगा उनको सेम रिक्वायरमेंट्स होंगी जो एक पर्सन विद डिसेबिलिटी के पास है. तीसरा एक सेरेंडिपिटी आर्ट्स फेस्टिवल गोवा में होता है, वहाँ पे हमने काफ़ी काम करना शुरू कर दिया. सो आई थिंक इट्स वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट एंड इट्स इंपॉर्टेंट कि पब्लिक स्पेसेस में बाहर पीपल विद डिसेबिलिटीज़ आएँ और लाइफ को सेलिब्रेट करें, और उसी से सोसाइटी का एटीट्यूड भी चेंज होगा कि एक पर्सन विद डिसेबिलिटी भी एक कंप्लीट ह्यूमन बीइंग है और उसकी वही ख्वाहिशें हैं जो बाकी किसी और की.
बिल्कुल. आराधना, 40% जो हमारे डिसेबल्ड आबादी हमारे देश की, उनके पास जॉब्स नहीं हैं, और आप अपने होटल्स में जिस तरह से लेती हैं, क्या आपके सुझाव हैं किस तरह से आगे बढ़ा जाए कि और जो कॉर्पोरेट्स हैं या सर्विस सेक्टर में और इनका दखल बढ़े?
So in the last 5 years, maybe even the last 10 years, I've seen a lot of change, whether it's the hotel sector, restaurant sector, retail, IT, ITES, banking. There are many companies that have expressed an interest in hiring people with disability as a normal part of their policy, not as an exception. And we've had the good chance or the good opportunity to be able to share our best practices with many organizations. So what we have been able to tell them is that in these 16 years, we have seen that there are about 6 or 7 steps that you need to take to make your company truly inclusive. I can say it very simply to you. At the very top of the company, this belief that it is a business benefit actually to go for inclusion must come in at the head of the company and then get cascaded through. That's the first step. The second step is you need someone to focus on inclusion. That's what my job is. And that's how we can do pilots, we can do experiments, we can try new disabilities. The third step is you have to sensitize everybody in the organization. I mentioned that. Tell them why and tell them about different disabilities. The fourth step is job mapping. So any company who wants to bring a person in who's got special needs, will have to examine the tasks of every role. So in our company, what happens at the front desk? What happens in the coffee shop? What are those 20 or 30 tasks a person does on a daily basis? If I bring a deaf team member into the team, can he do all those 30 tasks? If I bring a person with Down syndrome, can they do all the 30 tasks? This process is called job mapping. You take the help of your NGO partners because they are experts. We are hoteliers after all. You take their help to analyze and study, and that's how you work it out, that which job and which disability.
I wanted to just ask both of them, like how the urban space and the center, VB Center has been influencing the kind of framework, your research influences to the government, and how do you kind of take it up? Like how does the research made an impact?
As I mentioned earlier, the core of our work is research. Then after research, the next step that comes is dissemination, which is taking it to all stakeholders, which is not just government, but even public stakeholders, our collaborators, our partners. And after that comes, for us, impact is if we are able to convert that research into an engagement with the government. So typically in my experience at Vidhi, when we go take our work to particular stakeholders who are willing to make change within the government, sometimes they may take it up immediately. Sometimes they may come back in a few years' time saying that आपने ये बोला था, अब हमें करना है. Sometimes it may happen, they'll say, okay, we don't want to do this, but can you please help us out with this instead? This is the need of the hour. So and there are often times where we actually constantly engage, we are in touch, we stay relevant, we put our work out there to understand what is it that the government is interested in doing, whether it's at the center, at the state level, and we take forward our research to them. So there are different ways to sort of engage with the government and see what comes out. So in fact, more recently, we were interacting with the Ministry of Social Justice and Empowerment. So, and we had gone to talk about some of our present research work, and it ultimately culminated into putting together a case compendium for all Supreme Court and High Court judgments, because the need was felt to sensitize persons with disabilities, their caregivers, and even persons without disabilities about the contours of the Rights of Persons with Disabilities Act and what the courts have had to say about it. So engagements and impact can translate into different ways.
बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद आप सभी का यहाँ पर आए, और वाकई में मंजिल उनकी साथ हमारा है, आगे बढ़ते हैं और ये मंचन और ये मंथन यहाँ पर हम जारी रखेंगे. एक छोटा सा हम लोग ब्रेक ले रहे हैं. धन्यवाद.